Mr. Scorsese, man, I am so happy that I wasted no time and saw all 5 episodes of this documentary series based on my all-time favorite filmmaker, Martin Scorsese. It's on Apple TV Plus. I had a subscription before and I got back on it just for this man right here in the background. What a great documentary series. A lot of the guests that appear in the documentary was a surprise, such as Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio, who are frequent collaborators of his. Kate Blanchett, Spike Lee, his family, his ex-wives, his daughters, Daniel Day-Lewis, Jodie Foster, and many more appeared and participated in this documentary. There are certain things about Marty that I already knew. I knew about his his drug abuse. I knew about him finally getting over the hump and winning an Oscar for The Departed, which I think is ridiculous. I feel like he should have had at least 4 or 5 Oscars by now. He should have won for Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, but Marty was a filmmaker that he was not for everyone, and he always thought outside of the box. And you could tell by watching all these 5 episodes that he just loves cinema. He loves filmmaking. And I also knew about him having asthma problems when he was a kid. And that turned out to be a blessing in disguise because it limited him from playing sports and do other things. So he would just go to the movie theaters and just watch movies. Movies became his life. And so it became a blessing, a real blessing, that asthma that he suffered as a kid. Me as an independent filmmaker, I gotta thank Marty because he recommended so many movies, classic movies, especially Italian movies that I never heard of before. And when I was watching this documentary, I had to write things down, not only write down, notes to prepare to make this video, but also movies that I never heard of before. And I had to write it down before I forget. So Marty is not only this great filmmaker, but he's also a great teacher as well. He's like an encyclopedia when it comes to movies. It was interesting to learn about because I'm from New York, born and raised. So when he mentioned Bauer Street and Mulberry Street and how much of a dark history of violence that those street has, I'm like, man, I used to walk through those streets back in from 2016 through 2019. So it's crazy to even think about how it once was. I also thought it was interesting me learning about him working at the Woodstock Music Film Festival in 1969. Something I didn't know. Him working alongside with his NYU classmates such as Thomas Schumacher, who became a frequent film editor of his. You also have many people that that were instrumental in his life, such as Roger Corman, who opened up doors for a lot of filmmakers like Marty. Bunch of names, super a bunch of names. If you know who Roger Corman is, then you know what I'm talking about. Marty struggled socially in Hollywood. Him and Robert De Niro, when they met through mutual friends. Mean Streets was the beginning of everything between both of them. What I didn't know was the fact that De Niro was the one who pushed Marty to direct Raging Bull, and at the time, Marty didn't know anything about sports movies or even direct a sports film, but he took a chance on it, and it turned to be a great decision. The 1980s was definitely a struggle for Marty, because of the way the Hollywood and the industry was heading. And if you look at his catalog at that time, they weren't appreciated, but there's films that he made at that time that they're appreciated today, like The King of Comedy, for example. um the color of money is more appreciated nowadays. But the 80s was a tough time for him. You know, he was dealing with drug abuse and all this other stuff. I also like this documentary. It focused a lot on his failed marriages, the relationships that he had with these women, and also um how much his relationships improved with his daughters as he got older. Because Marty, at one point in his life, he had many years of, having anger issues, something that caught me by surprise. Him having anger issues or throwing temper tantrums here and there. But a part of that had to do because of the workload that he was doing on set, how much he poured his heart and soul into his films. And that's one thing I respect about Marty, that he really put his heart and soul into so many projects. And a lot of these movies that he made, he basically, it was almost like a reflection of him, but in his own way of doing it. He mentioned that he was nervous directing Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. It was something that was completely out of comfort zone. And again, and it took another artist for him to help him make it, to push him to make that movie. So Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Raging Bull. What's another movie that there were about like three or four movies that he wasn't too slow at the beginning to do it, but he did it. Well, those are just a few to mention. He'll probably come back to me later. Who knows? But in the 70s, Marty was definitely a working machine, as described in the documentary. It was just nonstop work. But it was important to learn that he almost died due to drug abuse and him working so much. One would say that he was somewhat a little bit hard-headed in terms of what the doctors were telling him, but he was just so passionate. He's so passionate about filmmaking. And Leo DiCaprio said it best in the fifth and final episode, which is called Method Director, that Marty is one of those few filmmakers that he will do it for free. That's how much he loves the craft of filmmaking. And Leo DiCaprio, one would say that he saved Marty's career when they started working together, because before Gangs of New York, he wasn't doing so well at the box office with some of these movies that he was directing. But when it came to Gangs of New York, that was the beginning of it was basically like a reborn of Martin Scorsese. And they went on to work on many projects together, Gangs of New York, The Aviator, which one of my favorite Marty films, The Departed. The list just goes on and on and on. I think that episode 3 and 5 are some of my favorite episodes. I would say 1, 3, and 5. Episode 3 is called Saint/Sinner, which is probably the most powerful episodes of the five. Episode 5 is Method Director, and the first one, I forgot the name, but the first one, it was basically introduction to everything. So those are some of my favorite episodes. I also thought it was interesting to learn that Martin Scorsese, after John Lennon's death, for a while he stopped going outside because since he was becoming known and recognizable, he was, in a situation like, I don't want to deal with none of this. And it became serious when he even got some death threats for a taxi driver because some guy was obsessed over Jodie Foster. And that same guy, a few years later, attempted to assassinate former president Ronald Reagan in 1981. He basically took a scene from Taxi Driver and went to apply that to go after Ronald Reagan, which is crazy. It's crazy what people. Some people, they just take an art form and they take it to a whole nother level. But thankfully, and Marty went through a lot. In this documentary, you learn that he he felt a sense of loneliness at some point. He went through a lot of back and forth battles with the movie studios and producers, the backlash criticism of his films, especially The Last Temptation of Christ. He, he went through a lot. He went through a lot. And again, there was a lot of things that I knew already. But again, no matter how much you know about a person, you're always going to find out more that you didn't know before. And there was a lot of things about Maury that I just didn't know that I was like, wow, I'm glad that he is still here with us. And one final thing, his pre-production for Killers of the Flower Moon, he really busted his tail to make that project. Projects like Gangs of New York, Silence, The Last Temptation of Christ, and Killers of the Flower Moon, these are projects that he had his eye on for years. And I'm talking about years. And the fact that he was able to make it, God bless him. God bless him. And I'm looking forward to his next projects because he's he's soon he's not far from approaching 80, but he's just not gonna stop. He loves making movies way too much. So my review for this documentary from 1 through 5, I give it a 4.4 out of 5 stars.